the Nether, a dimension of fire and brimstone, or more specifically, fire and blackstone, basalt, soul sand, and weirdly enough, the warped forest. I have a theory about this, a theory that's already been shared before, but a theory nonetheless. Hello everyone. Long time no see, very much so. It has been a busy time for me, very hectic, and I've had a lot to do in my personal life. But we are here. We have managed to make a video, and I'm glad. You know, it's been a while. It really has. I seen the last time I made a video, it was like a couple of weeks ago, a month ago. I'm trying to be a little more consistent, so, that's not a good look, But either way, today we've come with a lore theory about all three dimensions, the Nether, the Overworld, and the End. But for now, we're going to start with the Nether. Now, I was watching an old theory of MatPat's, mainly just talking about, the Nether, the End, and what lies inside and stuff like that. And I noticed Endermen are the only mobs that spawn in the Warped Forest. And it's like, oh, well, duh, update's been out since like 2018, 2020, of course, who doesn't know that at this point? But I feel like there's a lore reason behind that. There's no reason a being such as an Enderman would be lurking around in a place like the Nether. Unless the Enderman was trying to do something that the mob bestiary describes as displacing key blocks of that dimension to make it more void-like. Now, keep up with me. This is something that the mob bestiary describes the Enderman to do, and the mob bestiary is canon. For those who say, well, the mob bestiary is this is not. No, the mob bestiary is canon. It is canon, meaning what the Endermen are doing here is exactly what the mob bestiary says they're doing here. Because notice the weirdness of the Warped Forest. Notice the purple tint in the sky. Almost off, ominous. Notice how quiet it is here. Notice how when you do listen to the ambience, it's nothing. Nothing in the background, no trees, no plants. And on rare occasions, some static can be heard in the dimension. Now, when you play Minecraft Dungeons, one of the only mobs that static is associated with is these tall guys right here. Yeah, you go on ahead and walk away, Mr. I'm not a culprit of the crime. But anyways, let's just hear me out. Once you come into other dimensions, other biomes, like, let's say the Crimson biome, notice how you can hear everything. Notice how it almost automatically seems a lot more different. And this is where my theory comes in. The Endermen, and that's not necessarily a theory because it's already technically confirmed. The Endermen are trying to displace blocks, key blocks, to make every dimension more voidic. But that leads me back to my thing. If the Endermen are trying to displace blocks to make every realm more voidic, and at some point it was said that the Endermen aren't actually from the End. That's interesting. The Endermen themselves aren't from the only dimension that we happen to see them in. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a theory. Now, my theory is the Endermen were doing this to various biomes of the overworld and of all different dimensions. But then again, that brings me back to what was said. If the Endermen aren't from the End, then that means exactly what it says it means. They're not from the End. But then that begs the question, where are the Endermen from? Because if they're not from the End, then they have to be from somewhere, don't they? But then again, that also implies if these tall, lanky teleportation creatures aren't from the End, then that means the End technically isn't their dimension either. ladies and gentlemen, what if the end was the aether? Now I know, that is a leap in logic. I know, but trust me, there is some evidence that supports it. It can be, it doesn't necessarily sound like it makes sense, but just hear me out. Let's go back to the mob bestiary a little bit. We have these things, the warped forest. This warped forest is the only biome that spawn or is the only biome that Endermen will spawn in and inhabit. They occasionally, as you can see from this right here, they occasionally take blocks and simply move them around. Like so. These beings, they're not necessarily here for anything bad. They're trying to conform the Nether to the end. Which is why, in the Nether update, when you read about the Warped Forest, it's described as where the Nether meets the end. Meaning, these warped forest trees were just like any other Crimson Forest trees, but the Endermen have done something to the very material to simply alter it into being what it is there, a warped fungus tree. But notice the term warped. Most theorists actually go over this. Warped isn't something that naturally happens in nature. Warped is something that happens with outside interference. Kind of like the Endermen being outsiders to the Nether, trying to conform some of the Crimson Forest into their own biome. And again, notice the purple fog. Notice the ominousness of this biome, the silence of it. Even the static here and there, which again in Minecraft dungeons, though static and Enderman are heavily associated to the point where that's the only time you'll hear major static is when Endermen are present. Meaning they are trying to do in this biome the very thing that's described in the mob bestiary, displacing key blocks of this biome to make it more like theirs. And as you can see, so far they've succeeded. But then that begs the question, right? They're trying to displace all realms, not all three realms, not this realm and that realm. No, all realms, which would also therefore imply that there is more than the three realms that we have all traversed. And I know these are all leaps in logics, but listen, there is a portal in the ancient city. In fact, anyone who's gone to an ancient city has most likely seen it the first time they've entered in. A giant portal in the center of the city. And yeah, we can all debate and say it's not a portal, but the look at Spicewood, the cover, we see a giant being that looks similar to a warden bursting out of that portal, which means that thing in the middle of the ancient city is, in fact, a portal. Which means there's four dimensions, or at least now four that we know of. And even though we don't know what the fourth one looks like, we can still have the basic concept and idea and understanding that if there is a portal that we are not familiar with, that we don't know how it works, and it's confirmed to be a portal, then that means that there is another dimension lying behind the portal. But that takes me back to my other point about the Enderman, well, about the end being the Aether at some point. Now, we've seen exactly what happens and how it's affected, but let me clarify. The Endermen are trying to do that to the overworld too, and I have proof of that. Well, actually, I do not have proof of that. Let me stop. I mean, it's interesting though. It's very interesting evidence. I raise you the pale tree, the pale oak tree specifically. Now, something I've noticed interestingly about these trees is that, well, they're gray. In fact, they're so gray, it looks like the life has been sucked out of them. The trees are a dead ash type of gray, or no, more like a white ash type of gray, while the wood is bleached white, with some accents of pink, strangely enough. And one of the things you've noticed is that when you go into a when you go into a pale forest or a pale garden, it has a lot of the same similarities with a warped forest. Whereas in a warped forest, you're hearing the static, a little bit of static, weird silence, eerie silence. See a couple of Endermen. In the Pale Garden, it's exactly or almost exactly the same. Just a lack of presence of Endermen. It's quiet. There's no music. In fact, the biome is very eerie. And, we can say that we can chalk it up to the fact of it being the we could say it was the pillagers and the illagers, seeing as whenever you spawn an illager near a creaking, they get scared and run away almost immediately. But then again, though, just because they're scared of this mob doesn't mean they're the ones responsible for its creation. Let's think about that. What if, and this is just a what if the illagers and villagers, or at least the illagers and pillagers, seen what the Endermen were doing, and they tried to stop them. But because of what the Endermen created, the very forest had stopped them. That's why I'm like, realistically speaking, it it doesn't have to. Their fear doesn't always mean, oh yeah, they were the ones responsible for it. It was a monster that went out of control, and now they're scared. No, it could simply be a traumatic event that all illagers might remember that happened to some of them, and that's why they stay away from the forest. Either way, it's notable that we don't see any mobs in that forest, not even Endermen. So that's why I say that's not necessarily proof, because they don't show up in that biome, and it's not implied at all that they have anything to do with how the biome looks. But still, I noticed that is a key factor about some of the biomes they have had a hand in. It's always quiet. There's never any music. The ambiance is weird or it's eerie, and you'll always see one of them walking around. But while we've seen the Endermen do what they did to the Warped Forest, that's only them in the process of trying to make the dimension more voidic. Let's see what happens, or let's see the end product of what exactly they were trying to attempt with the end. Now, back to what I was saying about the end being the Aether. I know that sounds like hot. That sounds like a hot pile of garbage, okay? That sounds like mad bogus. How could the end, a voidic dimension with no sky, no stars, no clouds, no none of that, no sun, no moon, no none of that, could have been the Ether? Hear me out. When in the original conceptualization of this dimension, it wasn't all black and voidic with bleached yellow stone. No. In fact, it was supposed to look almost exactly how the Aether would look. It was a sky dimension, with clouds, with the sun, but unfortunately during the development process, something happened with the sun and the sky, and there was a glitch, leaving us with this all black void surrounding we see today. But that also makes me think, if the end was originally supposed to be the Aether, or at least a sky dimension like place, and they have explicitly stated that the Endermen aren't from the end, then that means this dimension didn't always used to be like this. That's just outright. Because, well, realistically speaking, that means two things. This dimension didn't always used to look like this, and Endermen aren't from here. Meaning there is another dimension that Endermen are from, because they had to have come from somewhere. There is no reason why these random beings appeared out of nowhere in this sky dimension, turned it into their own, or colonized it, because let's call it for what it is, and then, but they're not from here? That makes no sense. And that's why I say this dimension used to be the Aether. But I hear you. It also doesn't make sense because, well, why is it so bland? The Aether had grass and trees and foliage. Any type of foliage. Not every type, but it had foliage. Period. This end, and yeah, and don't get me wrong, there's trees, but this is an add-on. That tree right there, that's an add-on. That's an add-on. Base End by itself is just End Islands and Purpur. End End Islands and Chorus Fruit. meaning there's nothing naturally spawning in this dimension with any sort of trees, life, or none of that aside from the chorus fruit. And while you can eat it, and while it is a type of foliage, you don't see types of foliage like grass, trees, bushes. You know, the important stuff that would really want to make you think this didn't always used to be like this. But what if that's for a reason? You see, MatPat had a theory about the end, about it facing ecosystem death, about the ancient builders coming, overharvesting resources, and the end eventually turning into a barren wasteland because of their choices. Which realistically, it would make a lot of sense. It would make a lot of sense as to why there is no grass, but at the same time, that also wouldn't make sense. Even if the builders were able to, even if the builders over harvested resources, the end is an endless dimension. They would have had infinite resources. The end, the ironically enough, the end has no end. There is no point in which you will reach the edge of the dimension and that's it. You're always going to keep going. Like, the end is technically made up of rings. If anything, I'm barely even scratching the second ring. Not even second ring. I'm not even on the second ring. I'm within the first ring of the end because the center island is past the citadel. So, and that says a lot about this dimension. But I have, again, there's a theory for that. What if it wasn't the ancient builders overharvesting resources as to why the end looks like this? What if the end being a barren wasteland like this is a result of the Endermen colonizing this once sky dimension and turning it into what it is now? Now I hear you. That realistically kind of does and doesn't make sense, but think about it. If this dimension was originally conceptualized to be a sky dimension with clouds, a sky, and a weather system, then that would mean it was also originally supposed to have foliage. But if the Enderman came to displace blocks to make it more void-like, then that would mean this is the end product of what they're trying to do to all dimensions. Whatever they did to make this dimension more void-like, there ended up being no sun, and because there was no sun, all of the plants died. There, even if there was water at some point in this dimension, the Endermen have found a way to purge this dimension of water because it can be their weakness. And yeah, I'm not going to say that there's proof that there is water in this dimension because water can exist in this dimension, but I do think it's funny that anytime you put water down in this dimension, it comes out purple. And yeah, you could just say, oh, that's just part of the biome. That's just, that's just how the biome works and stuff like that. But the water is purple. The water is purple. And if I wanted to, a whole ecosystem could exist in this small little pond. So can water not only can water exist in this dimension, but everything within water can exist in this dimension. So again, what if that's exactly what happened to the end? It wasn't always the end. At one point, it was the ether. But when the Endermen came to this dimension, they displaced all the key blocks core to this dimension, and though it may have taken a while, eventually, over time, it looked like this. Now, there's holes in this theory, because that doesn't explain why the rock of this dimension, the only material, the only rock or stone type you'll find here, aside from purple, of course, is yellow. It's not even white, it's a bleached yellow. It's a strange yellow. Now, but that says a lot, because where did that yellow type of stone come from? Especially if there's no light source. The sky is a purplish black. In Vibrant Visuals, it's more of a purple, but in just base Minecraft, it's black. Though Vibrant Visuals is canonically how Minecraft looks, so technically the sky is purple. But then that begs a question. If the sky is purple, and there is technically a light source from the end storms, how is the stone of this dimension turning yellow and not a strange shade of purple? That confuses me. And again, there's still a lot that would disprove the theory, but that is where I bring in Minecraft Dungeons, which is actually where a lot of this architecture is inspired from. Minecraft Dungeons is the end in Minecraft Dungeons is almost completely different from how it is now. Types of foliage, flowers, lichens, trees, big trees, small trees, little trees. And yeah, it's all spread out, but there's different types of foliage, different types of life, even different variants of Enderman. The end that we see in dungeons is so diverse and unique, and there's so much going on there compared to this version of it. But hear me out. It's also in a way confirmed that Minecraft Legends comes first, and then it's Minecraft the base game, and then it's Minecraft Dungeons. Because of a simple thing that if you really want to, you can go look it up right now. There is an Ender Dragon statue. There is an Ender Dragon statue in Dungeons that depicts the Ender Dragon being slain by the player. Us, or you, or me, or whatever. The player, and that would also mean that the player, or you, is canonical to the Minecraft universe. Everything you do in this Minecraft world is canon to the overall timeline of Minecraft. The house you built is canon, whatever else you did is canon, and you killing the Ender Dragon is also canon too. So canon, in fact, it became a recorded moment in history when it became a carved statue. Meaning everything that is happening right now is canon. The slaying of the Ender Dragon was such a big and major event that someone made a statue of it. And though we may not see where the player is, or no, we don't ever actually know what happened to the player or you, the person who killed the Ender Dragon. But we don't necessarily need to. What matters is that if there is a statue depicting the death of the Ender Dragon, and there is nothing even resembling the Ender Dragon when we go to Minecraft Dungeons, that would mean by the time of Minecraft Dungeons, the Ender Dragon has already been long slain and has been dead for eons, not eons, but has been dead for a very long time. But that would also mean that at some point in time, foliage and other types of life started to grow in the end. Because why is it that here, in this version of the game, the end is all barren and there's literally nothing to come here for? Yet in Minecraft Dungeons, if Minecraft Dungeons played anything, if Minecraft Dungeons had a playing style that was, or playing mechanics that was closer to the base game, people would find bunches of reasons to go to that version of the end. And a lot of people do just to enjoy the aesthetic of it. But there was also something that was canonized in a way. While tweeting about the Minecraft Dungeons Echoing Void, one of the developers made a comment on how he didn't know why people were complaining about the dimension being barren. And if Minecraft or Minecraft Dungeons is canon to the Minecraft universe, that means the end canonically looks like how it does in Minecraft Dungeons. Whew. And that means that the Enderman may have displaced some of the blocks key to that dimension or key to this dimension to make it more voidic. Yeah, I hear ya. This dimension sucks butt. But in Minecraft Dungeons, there's so much more to work off of. Structures, giant structures, like the Citadel over there, or things just like how the end islands generate. You know, there's a lot of evidence pointing to that. But I also have other theories as to why all of the plants went purple and yellow when I also have theories as to why the plants went purple and yellow when the Enderman displaced this dimension. Now, as we see in the sky of this dimension, it's pretty blank, nothing crazy going on. But if we were to look in the sky of Minecraft dungeons echoing void, then we'd see myriad of things. We'd see stars. We'd see a sea of stars just under us and over us, and the void is all over, and the stars within the void are all over as well. But if you actually pay attention to the details in the level, there actually is a permanent light source that is just over the end. It's kind of like a giant black light flashing everything. But that could be the reason why some plants come out yellow. See, purple is a very strong color, but the opposite of purple, when you invert the color, or not invert the color, but yeah, the opposite of purple is yellow. Now, in real life, we do have some evidence of some plants growing to be the opposite colors of normal plants, and that is why I've come up with this theory of the Enderman at some point coming to the ether, displacing the dimension, and turning it into the end. The amount of foliage, the amount of foliage, the amount of trees, everything. But at the same time, there's not enough evidence to support that. Because when you look at the trees, it's not like the bark is purple and the normal wood is green. Or not no, it's not like the bark is purple and the normal wood is like, brown. No, the wood is purple. And there's a lot that I would there's a lot to approach in a certain way when it comes to the end. But either way, the theory still stands. Maybe at some point, possibly, the end could have been the ether. Though, I don't know. There's not enough evidence to prove that. It's a coincidence that Mojang has actively chosen. Mojang hired the guy who created the Aether, yet they've actively chosen not to add it as a dimension. I think that's very interesting. I really do. And the only sky dimension that we have just so happens to be the one that these tall, lanky creatures are from. But now you say that they aren't actually from the end? But if they aren't from the end, then where could they be from? That's what gets my mind going. Either way, I just wanted to run a little Minecraft theory. I'm sorry if this video was a bit long. There was a lot I had to say. I kind of had to get this off my chest because it wasn't lining up or making sense. And to be honest, the theory that I've just presented, it still doesn't line up or make a whole lot of sense. But it's something that I'm gonna keep studying on. Either way, yeah. Either way, I appreciate you guys for, whoever's gonna watch this, I appreciate you for watching it. I know it's been a long time since I've posted. I am still planning on posting some of those tutorial videos because I did say I was gonna make one, or I did say I was gonna make some, so that is still happening. But and I know since it's been a while, this video may not get very much views, and I don't really care. That's why I say whoever watches this video, thank you. You a real one. I appreciate you. I mean, hey, like and subscribe if you want to. You don't want to, you like Minecraft stuff. Hey, I'm gonna be posting. So, hey, like and subscribe because we are gonna be at this for some time. And if there's any other videos or something like that that y'all want to see, let a brother know. And yeah, you guys have a good day or a good night or a good morning, depending on where you guys are. And thanks for tuning in yet again to a world of dungeons.